Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm Stuart, one of the co-founders at Vividly. My other co-founder, Nikki, and I have spent our whole careers in CPG working together at brands like Justin's, Perfect Snacks, and Lily's, starting at each of those companies when they were small and then going on the journey from infancy through exit. And on these journeys, we were managing trade in Excel, would eventually adopt a TPM, and overall just felt really frustrated with having to do everything in Excel and it not being scalable, and then the other TPMs just not really fitting for what a small, fast-growing brand was like and the pain points that we really had. But in order to run a good trade process, it's not just about the system. It's also about the process and the best practices that you have in place. So I want to share today some of the ones that we learned along the way. And all of these really come back to trying to save time, trying to save money, and then cutting the smart corners where it makes sense to do so, but then also making sure you're not cutting corners in ways that are going to harm your business and end up actually taking you more time in the long run. Let's dive in. So our first topic is encompassing every single type of trade. So what do I mean by this? You've got scans and MCBs and slotting and EDLPs. Those are kind of the standard ones that everybody typically is planning promotions for. But we really want to make sure that we're encompassing every single type of spend that could be considered trade spend. And this doesn't necessarily mean you're creating a quote unquote promotion, but more of a bucket of what you expect to spend on those certain items, and then seeing how all of those deductions to align what your expectations are. So then you're really building a holistic, all-encompassing budget, and then seeing how each of those measure up. So a couple of examples where we typically will see brands ignore R&A, returns and allowances, and then merchandising. There's so many different fees that you can get from distributors or retailers, and these can really add up. And ensuring that you're tracking against those and are understanding what fees should be coming in and identifying when fees come across that you did not expect are really important. It'll also help you potentially dispute certain things because you're tracking these at a granular level. Uh, how do I go about this? You don't want to be doing R&A for every single customer out there. There's a few different kind of levels of granularity that you can do here, but I really recommend starting out at a super high level. You can create a promotion in the system at the all products, quote unquote, all products level. We'll even see customers create a fake customer called R&A. So it could literally just be R&A for January 2024 to all products. And you could say, hey, let's do 2% of our expected revenue for that month, and then do 2% each year or each month. And of course, you can use advanced duplication to create one and then immediately create the other 11 throughout the year. And then as returns and allowances come in, finance and accounting would be aligning those to those specific buckets that you created. So then you're constantly able to track, what did we expect to spend on R&A? And what did we actually spend on R&A? It's just really helping tighten the accrual and making sure that you're covering every aspect of trade. Now, over time, you can get more detail here if you want. You could be tracking R&A specifically for UNFI or KE or Target. Maybe you decide to do your top 10 customers or top 20 customers. I really like to do a crawl, walk, run approach. Maybe start with just something for the whole business. And then over time, if you want to, you can get a bit more granular. And everything I said for R&A also applies to the merchandising fees. Next up, all other buckets. I'm a big fan of this. So an all other bucket is really something that you can use to capture all of the sort of quote unquote unknowns, especially with distributors. So with UNFI, let's say you're going through Unify with Whole Foods and Natural Grocers and NCG and Infra and maybe Ahold, these larger customers where you can generate a good amount of revenue. But then outside of that, there's all these small mom and pop shops, airports, bodegas, whatever it may be. And those are hard to track. And all of these deductions are coming through for those. Maybe your brokers are sending out K-Stack deals to, a small store in San Francisco or something like that. We don't want to have to spend the time to go and create individual promotions for, a Jimbo's or something like that, or, all these individual promotions for each of those little bits of spend. So what we really recommend is, as a business, decide, where do you want to draw the line? Which customers do we want to plan individual detailed programs for? And then for all the other ones for that distributor, create an all other bucket. An example might be January 2024 UNFI all other. And each of the lines within that promotion, you could have one for MCBs, one for scans, one for slotting. So then as deductions come in that are not for all of those key retailers, then finance and accounting can just put those deductions in those places. This is so, so important, because what you end up doing is you actually end up tracking at a high level, how accurate was I at understanding how much we're spending in those areas. And this is something that is always very interesting to see with our customers, where they'll start out creating all of their buckets when they first start using Vividly, and they put in estimations of what they expect to spend. And then the deductions start to come in. And we can see in the data with our customers that the first year of going through this practice, they have no idea how much they're actually spending in all of these smaller customers. And they're actually spending way, way, way more. It is consistent that we will see, let's say, a couple $1,000,000 planned, and they're spending $5-6 million. It's several times more than you expect. And because you're starting to track this, you'll identify this. And then you can see, well, where is the spend going and why, and how do we stop it? So you can start to shrink those all other buckets. And then spend more in what I like to call the customers that are going to make you famous. This was a consistent trend across each of the brands that I worked at, and what I think really helped us succeed and sell to strategics. We were always allocating spend in the customers that were going to make us famous. Let's have, a 10% trade rate with all the small mom and pop shops. And maybe we were at 15%. Well, that 5%, maybe that's a few hundred, just as a few examples there. So just really, really, really important there. But I think the first step here is, as a company, decide, where do we want to draw the line? When do we plan for retailers? When do we put something into an all other bucket? So maybe it's our top 20 retailers or our top 30 retailers, or I'll see companies make a line in terms of revenue, any retailer in which we're doing $200,000 more or more with. Whatever it is, remember that you can always come back to this. So again, crawl, walk, run. Maybe start with your top 10 retailers. Next year, if everything went well and you were able to handle that level of granularity, go to your top 20 and then top 30. And over time, get more and more detailed. The last thing we want you to do is say, we want to track our top 100, and it's just way too much too much work for sales, way too much work for the accounting side. There's too much detail to take care of, and it's not really worth it. It's going to take a lot of time to do a lot of small retailers, and instead that time can be allocated with larger retailers, or spend more time getting out there and selling and growing a business, or on the accounting side, spending more time understanding the accrual and tightening it. So just a few really important pieces there. And one other small note on this, with the all other buckets, don't use it to also plan small retailers still. Get away from that. Don't say unify all other bucket dash Oliver's. You're getting away from the entire purpose of all other buckets. Next up, so naming conventions. This seems really simple, but it is so important. And brands where I see they are being really, really OCD about their naming conventions, it just keeps them super organized. It's so much easier to understand all the data. And the other aspect we have in Vividly is tags. So the first step here really is, as an organization, decide, what do we want our naming convention to be? Best in class brands, when they are starting with Vividly, they will be literally sending out a presentation to their sales team saying, hey, these are the expectations we have in place. This is how to name your promotions. An example at the bottom of the slide here, maybe it's customer, month and year, your product groups, promotion types, pricing structure, additional detail. I'll see folks always add, the word off shelf if it's an off shelf, or maybe you typically promote in multiples, 10 for 10, 3 for 5. include those in the name. This all ends up being searchable in the exports to Excel. You can be, filtering off of this information, just searching for things and understanding things. It's just, in general, good organization does end up paying dividends. And then tags is another easy aspect here. I could create a tag for off shelf, let's say. And then whenever I'm running an off shelf promotion, I put that tag in. In the system, I could search for that tag. I could click on that tag and immediately filter down to all my off shelf promotions, whatever it may be. But this just really comes down to being intentional with your process and being detailed with your process. This will allow you to scale as a company and not experience growing pains. Investing in this now, your future self will thank you. Trust me. Next up, product groups. We often see this get abused and definitely erode a bit of the data cleanliness. So what do I mean by this? Well, it's two aspects. First off, creating promotions at the product level is something you should very rarely do. When I do see this used properly is maybe something like slotting. I got my chocolate chip cookie dough into Target, and that specific flavor is what we're going to receive the slotting bill on. I could plan that promotion just to that product. But I would still make the argument that you should just plan that promotion at the product grouping level. So why is that? Well, that product grouping, of course, has products within it. So there's already detail there for finance and accounting of, oh, hey, if this is planned to this product group, it must be for an item within this product. But the real kicker here is time savings on the sales side. Let's say that you have a product group called 10-ounce drinks, and you have 2 of 5 items is currently selling in Kroger. You go into your promotion and decide to create that promotion for drink A and drink B specifically. You don't choose the product grouping and you choose the individual products. 4 months down the road, you end up gaining new distribution with them and you cut in a few new items. Well, now you have to go back to all those promotions and edit them to add in those additional items. Instead, you could have just planned to that product grouping. And then any new products that get added to your set, they're already part of that product grouping. There's no concerns there. And if you have those 2 products selling within that product grouping, you aren't going to be seeing sales for any other products. You aren't going to be seeing deductions for any other products. So there's not really any risk of being too high level in order to properly clear deductions. The other side of the coin here is all products. This is an aspect where in Vividly you can choose a promotion to be created at the quote unquote all product level. When I see this used properly is, let's say that you're doing a line drive promotion. You've got 10 different product groups as a company, and you're doing a display in Whole Foods. And that display is going to show all of those different 10 product groupings. That display fee is, I don't know what they are now, something like $50K. You could just plan that $50K to all products because it is going to apply to all products. I do see some brands deciding to just plan that to their highest revenue product group, which you can totally do that. It is maybe over allocating that spend to that product grouping and thus maybe artificially inflating the trade rate to that product group, but it's not a terrible option. The other option you could take is to break up that fee across all the product groups, maybe even by share of what business they are doing in Whole Foods. But in my opinion, that just takes a lot of time and is just a lot of additional work that I'm typically not a fan of doing. This is when I would plan something to the all products level. Now, what is the downside here? If I go into insights and analytics and I want to understand, my trade spend or trade rate at a specific product grouping, well, if I have some spend looped into the quote unquote all product grouping, then some of the spend that might be utilized in other product groups in detail are not available there. And now it is sitting in the all product section. This should not be a big deal if you're only using the all products when you have to. But if you're using it all the time, you're just saying, oh, I'll just do all products because it covers everything, then you end up losing all of the detail that you actually want at the product grouping level, which can be really frustrating from an insight standpoint. understanding ROI when different product groups have different margins, or just wanting to know how accurate was I at planning product grouping A versus product grouping B, or what's our budget by product group and how are we trending against it. You lose all that information if you're planning at too high of a level. The next piece is really, really important. So the miss log. The miss log, I would say, is sometimes the worst enemy of sales. I've never talked to a salesperson that enjoys the miss log, but it is so important. So, what is the miss log? The miss log is where finance and accounting are tracking and categorizing what are all the deductions that are coming in which no promotion or a bucket of spend currently exists in Vividly. So back to the first slide, you're getting all of these R&A deductions, but there's no home for them. Or you are getting deductions for a Kroger scan in June on a product grouping, and there's no Kroger scan in June for that product grouping. Well, the question is, are these deductions legitimate? There's no way to know if they're legitimate or not unless you have a promotion in the system, that there is an audit passing contract available. If that information is there, great. We can clear the deductions, align it to the promotions, get the instantaneous analytics in our system. But if it is not in the system, finance and accounting immediately have to ask themselves, is this deduction legitimate? Should I dispute this, or did sales forget to put a promotion in Vividly? So this is where the miss log comes into play. What we really recommend is the team having this log of these deductions and reviewing these with the sales team, hopefully on a monthly basis. At first, I guarantee you this log, it's going to be pretty big. You probably are missing a lot of different promotions in the system with deductions coming in, especially for those smaller buckets that I mentioned earlier. If you're a master of creating all of the different all other buckets, and you're a master of creating buckets of spend for every type of trade, your miss log's probably going to be pretty small. But what ends up happening as you do these reviews is sales will realize, oh gosh, I forget to enter, my target EDLP. I'm going to go enter that now and also create it for all of the additional future months. Now it will never show up in the miss log again. So the miss log should shrink over time, and thus the amount of unplanned spend for the business should shrink, which also means the accuracy of your accrual will increase, which is obviously extremely important. Now, the other side of the coin here is, as you reduce the miss log and as you're having these interactions between these departments, verifying, hey, did you just forget to create a promotion, or is this deduction potentially illegitimate? This allows you to be significantly more successful with disputing. You're only spending time on the deductions that really, really have a lot of evidence for potentially not being legitimate. So you can really lean into those, spend a lot of time on them, beat UNFI over the head with follow-ups, whatever it may be, and get those back. For us, we're seeing about 8% of a company's total trade budget is disputable. And we have about a 75% win rate on those. So we are getting a lot of money back for our clients. If you aren't doing as good as those numbers, you probably need to tighten your mislog process or potentially instill one in general. I do also want to call out that very soon here, we're going to be having a mislog inside of Vividly. So you could just access the mislog and review it as a team inside the system. Last but not least, just a few pro tips for everybody. Use advanced duplication. It saves you so much time. We actually went through a few tests where we got like a Sprouts calendar and a Whole Foods calendar and a Target calendar, and we entered those in sort of a standard Excel planner, and we timed how long that took. And then we entered those exact same promotions in Vividly using advanced duplication. It took 82% less time, but we still see users all the time just creating promotion by promotion by promotion instead of using advanced duplication. Or going back to the mislog conversation, if there was a mislog for a UNFI admin fee, and this happens on a quarterly basis, create that first one that was part of the mislog, let's say it was in January, but then advanced duplicate that for the future months so it doesn't show back up in the mislog. So always make sure that you're utilizing these aspects of the software that will save you a lot of time. The next piece is establishing thresholds for sales and finance. And this is the key that they can both agree upon. Super, super important. Maybe it's $200. Anything that's like $50, we're just not going to spend our time on it. We've got bigger fish to fry as an organization. It's just I think, a really smart and efficient way to allocate resources. Third, avoid planning and accrual for the entire year in the month of January. So what do I mean by this? Let's say you have a year-long EDLP with a customer, and you just create a promotion in January and put in all the spend. Well, you aren't going to be able to fully like close that January promotion, understand that accrual until the very end of the year. And there could be detail within there that you're missing. We really recommend you create this one promotion in January and then advance duplicate it immediately for every single month. And then you're tracking every single month. How is this trending over time? How is my accuracy trending over time? Are there additional deductions coming through associated to this that don't make sense? It's also incredibly likely that an October deduction will be flagged as missed if the promotion's sitting in January. Imagine being that finance and accounting person and you're at the end of the year. Why would you even think of looking for a promotion in January? Make it easier on them. And then obviously with our matching technology, create your promotions in such a way that the matching logic also makes sense. It can easily find that promotion if it's in the month that that deduction was received. So the last piece here, be aware of different promotion types and the nuances between them. This can be so important. The one example I'll give you is, let's say you're running a TPR in Sprouts. Is it an MCB or is it a scan? That has massive implications. That MCB, let's say it's UNFI, you're going to receive the max markup associated with that MCB. Whole Foods, for example, I think their markup with UNFI is like 6 or 8%. But if you're running an MCB in Whole Foods, you're going to receive like a 35 or 40% markup on what you're actually giving to the retailer, and they're just going to pocket that money. And then if it's the scan, well, there's the scan fee and there's the scan back date ranges with Whole Foods or whatever it may be. So there's fees associated, there's markups associated. There's a completely different understanding in what that promotion is truly going to cost you. And of course, the point of sale data is never going to tell you that. Only the deductions are going to tell you that. So you have to know the details of and the nuances of the types of trade that you are planning towards and how it varies for each retailer and for each distributor. I've worked with a number of salespeople that are creating their MCBs in a trade system and don't even realize about the markup. And so they're budgeting their trade spend thinking, oh, this is a 20% discount. It's off of my list cost. This is what it is. And then ends up being a 20% discount off of the max markup. And it ends up that their budgeted trade rate is 20%, but their actual trade rate is significantly higher and they don't even realize it. So just a really, really important piece here. And overall, why do we care about all of this? Why does this detail matter? It's the second largest expense in your P&L. It's a lot of money. And trade is so important in the industry. It is one of the key levers for driving trial, for increasing basket size, or said differently, getting current consumers to buy more of your products or to try new products of yours, or consumers that have never had your products before. Running that right promotion will get them to try it out for the first time. So these are just so important for growing your business, and being really tight with your trade spend will only help you in terms of your financials, working with banks, going through due diligence with strategics. It's just something that cannot be ignored. Everybody's got skeletons in the closet when it comes to trade spend. Eventually they will catch up to you. They just will, unless you really are intentional about how you plan, track, and organize your trade spend. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.